Welcome to another episode here on my channel. My name is Chaosmole, and today we are going through the Outriders Worldslayer launch balance patch notes. Because as you know, Outriders Worldslayer is coming out actually tomorrow in early access, and it will bring a lot of balance changes to the game. And those balance changes will also be active in the base game. So even if you were deciding not to go with Worldslayer immediately, these changes will still affect you. So let's just go through them, shall we? Worldslayer Balancing Introduction. Worldslayer will be introducing a host of new features and systems, while also changing and expanding on some of the things you will already be familiar with. These are the changes that have been in the works since the New Horizon update last November. So this is one of the big things, right? Like, this is not a live service game. Outriders didn't get like a lot of like balance changes throughout the year. The first big one was in November with Last Horizon, and then we got nothing, like literally nothing. So half a year of nothingness. And even though New Horizon changed and fixed a lot of the issues the game had, it wasn't perfect. So let's go through the general state of combat and difficulty. To kicking things off, let's take a quick look on how the original game's combat shaped out to be in the endgame. At launch, Outriders combat was extremely volatile, pun not intended. Some of you will likely remember some of the spikes in difficulty when trying to progress through expeditions. For some players, these spikes were like hitting a brick wall, something they felt simply could not to be overcome. Our pre-launch vision for Outriders was that progress through challenge tiers would take time, and that it would take a great deal of experience, knowledge, and build optimization to push through those spikes. While some players appreciate the challenge, we do understand that many others were frustrated, those spawning the carry culture where some players wanted to be carried, especially through challenge tiers 9 and 10. Yeah, there were also some other problems. First of all, the whole like challenge tiers in the campaign nobody really used. So when people reach level 30 and when people reach the end game, they basically had like challenge tier 1 equipment because that was the fastest way to reach the end game. And then they could just get the equipment at the end game, but it made also things much more complicated. Like, you raised in difficulty faster than your equipment could basically keep up. I think that was the biggest problem Outriders had, because if you would finish a level on the highest difficulty which was available to you at the time, you would immediately unlock the next difficulty, right? But that doesn't mean you got the right equipment to go there. So now you might say, well, that's on the players, right? Then they have to go back. Yeah, but sometimes you were jumping fast. Like, it was a bit of miscommunication between the game and the players to basically tell them, yes, you unlock the next 2 difficulties, but don't go there because your equipment is totally not on par on it. And so people felt trapped. And at the beginning, you couldn't even like go back too much. Like right at the beginning of Outriders, when you were going up in difficulty, there wasn't a way to go back to the lower difficulties for a while. And you were trapped in this insane difficulty spike where you couldn't escape out of. They fixed it. They did a lot to make this better, but that was definitely one of the main issues they had. With Worldslayer, it is our aim to bring a more streamlined and stable environment for all the players. Good. With the introduction of the Apocalypse tiers, which replaced the challenge tiers even in the base game, we were able to look into the enemy damage curves and make them less steep. Yeah, that's also one of the things I noticed. Like even just going 1 difficulty up, it was like a damage increase of like 200% on the enemies, but even if you would get the best in slot gear for that difficulty, only your defenses would increase by 10% or so. Like, your only way was to go full on glass cannon, because even if you didn't, you were still absolutely vulnerable. So you were just like, okay, I'm getting one-shotted when I'm not going full on glass cannon. I'm also getting one-shotted when I'm going full-on glass cannon, but at least I have the chance to immediately kill the enemy also with a one-shot. So what are you doing? Well, you're going glass cannon. It's as simple as that. And of course, yes, I know, the timer. That you always had to run on the timer was absolutely shit. Additionally, we further reduce the spike threshold and adjust the amount of damage events occurring within a second. Yes, please, thanks. You may remember the spike threshold damage events within 1 second discussion from when especially glass cannon players suffered from what was thought to be a one-shot deaths. Yes, I actually had that when we just returned a few days ago to the New Horizon update, and I had full health. Something happened, and the whole campaign, it was super easy. Like that whole event did go well. I killed the enemies, and then there was like something weird happen, and I was dead. I couldn't react to it. There was no, oh, you made a mistake. It was literally just some event occurred where like a lot of damage things would come together, and you were just dead. There was no reaction time. The changes introduced in Worldslayers will decompress the difficulty curve across the tiers. Good. In essence, playing through the Worldslayer campaign on low and mid tiers should provide a much more pleasant experience as opposed to climbing challenge tiers. Good. The difficulty will then ramp up on higher tiers, compounding in an endgame challenge, with those players aiming for the most difficult of challenge will still appreciate. Yeah, I think that's good. Like, we had, what, 15 difficult tiers in the normal Outriders version, and you were going through like 1, 2, 3, 4, and it was like, path, that's easy. Then 5 came around, pounded you into the ground. Then there was 6, which was easy again. Then 7 came around. You were just pounded again into the ground. And then 8, 9, 10 was absolutely nightmares. 1, 12, 13 were easy tiers again. And then it was just a nightmare again. And it was this ups and downs, which just didn't feel good. Note that we are keeping a close eye on difficulty and progression in Worldslayer, specifically the speed at which players progress through Apocalypse tiers and when or they get stuck somewhere. We might adjust this progression in the future, depending on player feedback and our data. We keep an eye out on whenever players are progressing into tiers faster than their gear can keep up, which can lead to difficult spikes, and whenever progression to higher tiers remains fun. Yes, like, just do this. Tier 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, pretty easy. You are getting your first endgame equipment. You are getting eased into the whole experience. Then 6, 7 gets a little bit tougher. You feel like that you have to really put some thoughts into your skill trees, into your equipment. Just don't start to mix and match like different equipment perks. And then it ramps up more and more. Like, if they are managing that, that's amazing, right? And please, 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 please do me a big favor here, devs. Do not just disappear again. That was the biggest problem people really felt when the game came out. They reached endgame. The endgame was a disaster. They were screaming for help. They were not even like demanding shit. They were literally screaming for help with those issues, and you just disappeared because this is not a live service game. We out, bitches. I was like, don't do that. And by the way, for all the folks coming in, hi, say hi to YouTube. We're also recording this for YouTube. So, and for all the people watching on YouTube, if you're wondering who am I talking to, I'm recording this live in my stream. Welcome in, folks. Welcome in. Sit down, we are going through the Outriders Patchnotes for Worldslayer. So, builds, sets, mods, over and underperformers. Oh, we have to talk about this. Over the past year, despite our best effort, there was a visible gap between certain sets or builds. Yes, reasons for this may vary between either set bonuses or keystone mods, but the net result was that there was a pool of builds that they were simply not competitive enough to sit comfortably along or even around the meta builds. Examples of those builds include the Borealis Technomancer, Akari Pyromancer, Seismic Commander Devastator, and post New Horizon Trespasser Trickster. Yeah, because they nerfed that into the ground. And I think that was the biggest problem. Like, again, this could all been fixed through balance, but the developers just pieced out after the release, more or less. And we never really got the balance which was needed to keep the builds up to date. Unfortunately, balancing patches can only go so far, and we weren't able to fully bridge the canyon caused by the differences in output between these builds and others. Despite our intentions to the end time trial meta by removing timers from Expedition and thus allowing players to take as long as they wanted with the content, we still observed that many players continue to gravitate towards the meta builds mentioned above, because that's what they always do. While it was absolutely possible to complete CT15 expeditions with other builds or sets, the natural inclination to pick these meta-defining builds over others remained. Yeah, because let me tell you why. I just realized that yesterday again. Because an expedition takes 20 minutes. I know you can be faster, especially with the meta builds. You can be much, much faster than that. Like, you can basically cut it down to like 10 minutes or 7 minutes. If you're really good, you have the right equipment and you have the meta build. So cutting your time in half is already really helpful. But also, when you die right around the end boss and you already invested 20 minutes into this expedition and the game is like, lol, try again, noob. And you have to begin the whole process again from the beginning. Yeah. Guess what happens with a lot of people? They lose interest very quickly. It's very annoying. I had that moment yesterday. I was playing my Technomancer, who doesn't really have like the best in slot gear, who doesn't have a meta build, right? Whereas my Devastator totally has best in slot gear and a meta build, and he is just crushing things, whatever. But my Technomancer actually died in a round, and it was so annoying that I was so close to a rage quit because I just wasted time, right? This was quite sobering to observe, as it took away from the core Outriders drive to have fun wreaking havoc with whatever build one's mind could come up with. Yeah, but that's the problem. Like, when you have even like shitty normal enemies turning around and be like, pooh, half of your health is gone. Pew, half of your health is gone. Oh, there was just one bullet? Well, buckle up, because there are 5 others of my friends coming doing the same shit, and you will probably die in that instant. So have fun. Like, it's astounding how Outriders became, in the story, was this, you are a superhero. You are a god at this point. Nothing can stop you. You don't give a shit. And then the end game is coming around, and the game is like, well, time to put you in your place, bitch. It's like, yeah, that is also very sobering. And those damage spikes definitely did the rest for people just going for meta builds. And while we acknowledge that the burden of optimal play is more often than not on the deciding factor in choosing what to play, we stand by the philosophy that players should be able to forge fun in their own way, instead of being railroaded away from specific builds just because they deal less damage. A preferred playstyle should not be sacrificed for the sake of performance. Likewise, killing enemies fast enough should not be the only determinant factor wherever a build in Outriders is viable or not across the entire spectrum of skill. Again, get your balance in order, and the damage the enemies can dish out, even on higher difficulties, and we will see more builds which are just fun. Like, if you want to get a main example of games which are working like this, Elden Ring or the Souls games. And you're like, wait, what? You can literally beat the whole game with a level 1 character and a freaking stick and some loincloth. It is doable. It's bullshit. Don't do it. It's horrible, but it is doable. And yes, there are absolutely meta builds for all the Souls games, For Elden Ring, there are meta builds. Absolutely, they do exist. But Elden Ring really simmers down the whole fighting to skill. You will have it much, much easier when you have a meta build, and skill is becoming less a necessity. But if you just have enough skill, you can come up with completely stupid builds. 2 shields with heavy armor, yeah, sure, knock yourself out. Like having like a in character who is like an assassin type, yeah, sure, works. It's not perfect, but it works. And I think this is what Outriders always missed. The game was punishing you too hard, balance-wise, with the enemies when you were not running a meta build. Yep. Furthermore, we found that the majority of players were using a certain mods or builds in unexpected ways, perhaps because these elements did not fit in the community vision of the respective build. Rather than attempt to force through the original design, we have tried to bend those things in a way so that to better fit what the community was trying to do with them. I don't fully understand what that means, but let's just face it, some mods were just better than others. That's the TLDR. Some mods were so much better than some of the other mods you had. It's like, and you have a limited amount of slots, so you have to make decisions. We also know that some base game sets and mods did not offer any real effective combat value, yep, or had a fundamental hindrance, and were subsequently perceived as lackluster. We gave them extreme makeover and we implemented balance changes so that such sets and builds could offer unique playstyles instead of just copying what the top tier meta once did. Good, I'm curious to see that. What Worldslayer also allowed us to do was make complex changes beyond simpler numerical tweaks. With all this in mind, we rebalanced the top performers to bring them in line with other build options, while at the same time buffing the underdogs to level the playing field. Examples: the Torturer set has become a dedicated Hypercleave set, sharing a portion of the main target's damage with all the enemies affected by its aura. Wow, that's pretty good. The Plague Sower will now just provide a defensive benefit, but also add offensive boosts against enemies suffering from Toxic. Yo, that's cool. I always wanted to build a Toxic build. Unfortunately, the set was just meh. Like, there was a set which sounded like you could really go full on Toxic, like a dot build. And where's my drink? There. And it never did. It was really disappointing. But another big point, some of this stuff just works weirdly in Outriders. Like when you were looking to some of the calculations, how damage works, how your passives work, how life leech works. If you really want to hear something absolutely crazy about life leech, I think I actually made a video about it, but Life Leech is just, what is this? Who came up with this? This is not how Life Leech works, or should work. It was super complicated. It wasn't the usual do 20% of your damage and get it as health back. There was this do 10% of the certain stat as damage, and then depending on your missing health and your maximum health and the missing health of the enemy, that's the health you would get back as Life Leech. And I was like, too complicated, man. Too complicated. Earlier on, we mentioned fundamental hindrances. We had a look into why certain sets were able to perform to some degree, but were ultimately never really able to spread their wings. The Martial set is such an example. I mean, I could probably tell you. For the Martial set, we removed the target limitation, which will allow players to more readily capitalize on grouping multiple enemies with endless mass. Good. And then there are mods. Yeah, mods. We had an extensive look at which mods are must-haves, which were consistently underperforming and which simply did not support our own dedicated playstyle. We reworked those too. Quick example, the Asunder mod for Earthquake now reduces resistances instead of armor, which means that it will directly increase the damage of anomaly power devastators who will be relying on the skills. Awesome, and with that it's part of my build. So I am an Earthquake Devastator. That's what my main character is. I'm an Earthquake Devastator. I'm a mage who is using Earthquake all the time, trying to apply bleeding on the enemy, and is just whacking them with Earthquake. Awesome. And I know Asunder because Asunder is such a useless mod. It took away armor from the enemy. Armor. Dude, I'm a mage. I am doing anomaly damage, aka magic damage. Why would I care for armor? Sure, I can see in some world where there might have been some devastators who used Earthquake just as a debuff creator, but 99% were using Earthquake as their main damage buff when they were basically like a mage. Right. And this is such a small thing, but it shows me that for the future and for the expansion, we will get some amazing changes here. We will get some amazing changes, even if they are just small. There are, of course, many more such tweaks, many of which are aimed at providing improved cohesion and synergies with their associated builds. Weapons balance. The state of the weapons meta was another big topic of discussion, both within the community and internally. Yeah, wonder why. We saw the over-reliance on tactical variant assault rifles, which provided to be very powerful all-rounders. Instead of simply nerfing a tactical variant, we took a broader look at all the weapon variants to see how we could increase the fun and viability of other weapons and variants. While nerfing tech AR would likely have been the easier and faster solution, it would probably not have solved the underlying problem that the underplayed types had in the first place. To use a metaphor of a 200-meter sprint, it would be like untying the laces of one constant while the others still are running barefooted. Sticking with the metaphor for a moment, we choose to provide footwear for everyone else. Yeah, so the biggest problem, let me explain why this is such a problem. Weapons in Outriders have mostly trigger mods. So mods which are trigger when you hit a target. Right. And those triggers would have cooldowns. And they could range between 1 second and 8 seconds or even more. Right. So a tactical AR, which only used like a triple shot, so 3 bullets, they would be precise, they would trigger all the mods, and then it would take like another few seconds before the next 3 bullets would hit the enemy, which would also give the cooldown enough time to cool down so that the mods could be triggered again. So basically what I'm saying here is you wouldn't waste a lot of bullets without triggering the mods on your weapons. That's why tactical ARs were so good. You didn't need like a fast shooting weapon, which is emptying their magazine in 4 seconds. Because in those 4 seconds you would only have triggered your mods once. Probably. Again, they vary. Right. So, yeah, there was no real reason to go anything else than tactical ARs. We looked at which weapon types struggled in what way, and we aimed to provide precision buffs in the place where we have the capacity to do so. Most commonly, you will see tweaks to damage and range for many variants, as well as changes to accuracy, stability, RPM, and critical multiplayers and others. Okay, this is interesting for the people who are going physical damage, which are going weapon damage. These changes were tested during the most recent Worldslayer beta and seem to have been a big positive impact on how players felt about weapon balance overall. It is our hope The Worldslayer brings a breath of fresh air to the weapons pool, and the players will be finally able to run with the gun variant they prefer instead of the one they feel shoehorned into. Yeah, as I said, if that helps, good. Amplifier builds, long live the king. Have you done your math homework? We have, for Worldslayer. No weird equations anymore. I don't need a master in physics anymore to understand the amplifiers. Thank you. During the course of the base game's lifecycle, we observed the unchallenged dominance of percentage damage multipliers as primary build components, which enabled hyperscaling of the highest order. Yeah. 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 Like 20% more stats damage on 2 weapons, which would then end up at 40% more stats damage. Oh, I'm running a bleed build. Everyone dies. Yippee-yay. Easy peasy. The best performing builds were mainly comprised of passive percentage amplifiers gated behind simple conditions, leaving very little room for personal preference or unique gameplay ideas. The notorious pre-New Horizon Fortress is such a good example. Yes, I know exactly what they mean, as it provided a flat but huge percentage increase to damage with no skill or gameplay required. Yes. A more current example would be a common weapon-based Borealis Monarch Technomancer build. This build stacks Freezing Boost, Shatter, Radical Therapy, Euthanizer, Dark Sacrifice, Patchnotes, long-range damage, and a few other such amplifiers. These relentless stacking of high-value amplifiers let players multiplying the damage nearly 5 times over, all for a single unique cost of being able to calculate it all, which could be easily done even outside the game itself. Yep. And most of the time, you just had to hit 2 buttons to reach that goal. That's crazy. In Worldslayer, we have carefully considered our stance on such builds, and we feel that if build pieces that require very little active gameplay effort remain as potent as they are, other builds or ideas will never get close enough in output to match them. Again, the Fortress rework we implemented last year is a good preview of that philosophy, as we as much as possible try to maintain its overall strength, but added gameplay requirements to triggering it, e.g. landing and stacking successful shots. Yeah. Yeah. There was the whole idea that you basically became a one-button character and you annihilated them all was kind of bonkers. Yeah. One of the biggest balance changes in Worldslayer that you will observe will be the reduction of percentage damage multipliers across the board. Our intent is to move those pieces of build progression from the absolute essential category and make them fit in a more as supplementary to builds. So this will be a big nerf. With the new content being released, rather than continuing to uphold gameplay elements that are in effect nothing more than higher numbers being displayed on screen with very little thought or concentration required, we wanted to actively engage players to be able to use and rely on their own player skill. Yeah, as I said, me as a Devastator with Earthquake build, I was literally just getting all the enemies in line, hit 1 3 times because that's where my Earthquake was at. Then I waited for my cooldown and I did it again. I waited for my cooldown, I did it again. Well, most of the time I just had to do it once or twice and everyone was dead, but you get the idea, right? Like from a pure how fun is this, it gets stale quite quickly. Yeah. However, this does not mean that amplifier builds will no longer be viable. There is still a place for them in the grand scheme of things, but they should ideally no longer hold the dominant and unchallenged top spot. This is one of the many steps we took in creating a more equal environment for different builds and playstyles. Again, awesome. Awesome. Like, they are builds which are much more complicated because you also have to use some skills to make them work, and they never reach the same potential. And it felt devastating. It's like you completely lined up the people for your rocket launcher. You made sure that all the other stacks are already there. You prepared them, basically. You marinated the enemy before they came closer, and then you were just shooting the rocket launcher, see them getting devastated by it, because you like applied all the different debuffs on them. And it took a while. It took some thought and effort. And then there was a devastator coming in, hitting Earthquake 3 times, hitting the whole room. Everyone dies. Move on. It's like, wow, okay. Well, thanks that I made the effort. Triggers. As part of our work to improve the overall balance in Worldslayer, we took an intensive look at the many triggers on both weapon and armor mods. Yep. This is what I talked about earlier. Right, why the tactical ARs were so much better. As always, we closely watched how different triggers behave in solo versus co-op environments and how reliable they intended to be. The biggest problem were the on-kill triggers, as there was an extreme swing in their reliability when comparing single to multiplayer play sessions, especially the peer-to-peer connection relied on a less than ideal host. Connectivity aside, in both solo and multiplayer, on-kill effect were also found to be unreliable, as they would not trigger if any enemy was killed by a damage over time or other factors. Yeah, that was the dumbest thing ever. Oh, you killed an enemy? Oh, it was through a dot and not your, like, direct damage? Well, that was not a kill for you, sorry. I was like, what? No, that was a kill. No, it wasn't. Oh, your ally took the last hit? Well, it's not a kill for you. Sucks to be you, I guess. I was like, oh, it was so infuriating, man. It was so infuriating. There were also cases of very hard to fulfill triggers, such as Aura of Force, Critical on Kill, which will provide anomaly power. In a realistic scenario, this trigger would be highly unlikely to occur for dedicated builds that would turn to AP damage instead of FP output. Yeah, as I said. We approached these issues in two ways. We streamlined the hard-to-fulfill and unreliable triggers in order to make those mods more effective in the long haul. We also transitioned many of the on-kill or critical kill triggers to successful shot or critical shot. Good. I hate on-kill triggers because the problem was also the moment you were going in a boss fight and you didn't have like a lot of minions to go around to get up like your buffs, they were pretty useless, right? Was this, oh, I could have just used something else instead. Additionally, by reworking triggers and weapon mods especially, we guarantee that many defensive and utilitarian mods will now occur when their value is the highest in combat. A good example here would be Dome of Protection. Oh, cool. Occurring on successful shots, which will allow the player to spawn and right at combat start when enemy pressure is the highest. Previously, this mod required a player to kill a target with a bullet, and that would often only occur when Dome of Protection effect was less required than at the start of the combat. Yeah. This is, I couldn't find a better example for this. This is literally the greatest example here. You have those swamp of enemies coming at you. You have a defensive skill, and that defensive skill will only occur if you are sending the last bullet into that enemy and you had to kill that enemy. That's like, cool. That's useless because my team dispersed, I found some cover, I already killed some enemies through other ways. Like, it would take far too long. So yeah, great example. I couldn't find a better one. Finally, we unified hereditary mods. Okay. into the same trigger, so there would be no dissonance when switching or upgrading from one to another, such as from Bone Shrapnel to Ultimate Bone Shrapnel. Previously, Bone Shrapnel had an on-kill trigger, whereas Ultimate Bone Shrapnel had a critical shot trigger. Yeah, that was also very weird. There were not a lot of those. There were not a lot of those abilities, but it was still weird to see. Let me see. There are also some comments from the developers directly. Comment by Theocan. Did you fix the mods that stop working on parties to get bullets after kills, like BR builds for the Techno or VR for Pyrus? Have a look at the trigger section. Those covers these kind of situations, okay? I'm sure if you're reading the same blog that I wrote. I've currently planned to do for 2 reasons. It's an enormous amount of information. Okay. Check the QLL news section. Cleave is damage that is split from the main enemy and shared across a set of enemies nearby. It is similar but still different from area of effect, where the damage is dealt to an unlimited amount of enemies within a certain radius. Hypercleave means that it's extra good at cleaving. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, this is... I will be honest, this sounds really good. Again, I can just not see this and say this enough, but I'm really hoping that after the game releases, they will care about the game. Especially now that we have the Apocalypse tiers, which they already said they would take a closer look at. There will be 40, by the way. Yep. 40 is now Worldslayer, the new max one. And Apocalypse gear pieces have 3 mod slots. Yep. Which should open up the skill variety quite a bit. I think this was like a general problem that, yes, you had to make some tough decisions, but sometimes you were basically one mod short to make a really cool build work. Like right now, I am on my Technomancer. I am playing like a minigun, rocket launcher, poison turret build. It's not meta. It's my own creation. It works. But I can already tell you at this point that I have to make some really, really tough decisions to basically lower the effectiveness of one of those skills. And it pains me because they are all really interesting combinations I cannot really utilize because I'm missing some mod slots. And we are not talking about 4, 5, 6 mod slots. We are literally talking about I will probably be 1 or 2 mod slots too short on making this build work. And it's infuriating. So, more mod slots. Awesome. Like, looking forward to that. Each class we're getting a new dedicated 5-piece legendary armor set, which should be nice. Worldslayer does also introduce a few new 3-piece legendary armor sets, which will be universally equipable by all classes. This will have their own set bonuses as well. Notes that some of the previous legendary armor sets and mods will also be reworked as a part of the Worldslayer launch. We don't have more information about those yet. Each new legendary gear piece introduced in Worldslayer also comes with a new mod. We are planning to show off some of the special gear you can obtain in the Worldslayer social channels. Okay. Yeah. That's pretty good. Then also keep in mind we will have new packs class trees. Those will be separate class trees, and every class will get 2 of them. And then there's also the new Ascension system, which is basically infinite leveling. So I'm really looking forward to this. I'm really looking forward to this. This is some great information. Yes. Yes. All right. But with that said, folks, we are at the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts and commentary on the patch notes. If you did, and you're on your way out, I would appreciate if you leave a like. If you're new to the channel, you want to see more Outrider videos, I'm also doing Lost Ark, some gaming news, I have my own gaming podcast, and many more things here on the channel. I would appreciate if you might consider to subscribe to the channel. It will help me out a great deal. And if you want to go even further than that, first, you can help me out on patreon.com/chaosmole, and I'm also streaming from Monday to Friday, starting at 8 AM ET right now, which is 2 PM UK time and 3 PM Central European time, over at trovo.live/chaosmole. And on Friday, I'm here on YouTube. So thank you so much for watching. Hope I see you next time. Stay safe. Bye bye.